Welcome back, my friend, to Irish Fantasy Sleep Stories. My name is Brendan, and I hope to guide you to a deep and restful sleep. Tonight's story is titled The Cattle Raid of Cooley. In the misty hills of ancient Ireland, where legend and history intertwine like Celtic knots, a tale of pride, power, and bovine conquest unfolds. This is the story of the Cattle Raid of Cooley, a saga that would shape the fate of kingdoms and heroes alike. At the heart of this epic lies the western province of Connacht, ruled by the formidable Queen Medb and her husband, King Ailill. Medb, a woman of unparalleled ambition and fierce determination, was known throughout the land for her beauty, her cunning, and her insatiable desire for power. With flaming red hair and eyes that sparkled with intelligence, she commanded respect and fear in equal measures. King Ailill, though a worthy ruler in his own right, often found himself overshadowed by his wife's dominant personality. Their court at Cú Chulainn was a place of wealth and intrigue, where bards sang of great deeds and warriors boasted of their prowess. Little did they know that a simple conversation between the royal couple would soon set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of Ireland, pitting province against province in a conflict that would be remembered for generations to come. As the night settled over Cú Chulainn, Queen Medb and King Ailill retired to their royal chamber. The firelight cast flickering shadows on the walls as they reclined on their ornate bed, adorned with the finest furs and fabrics. Their pillow talk, usually filled with matters of state and gossip from neighbouring kingdoms, took an unexpected turn. "My dear Ailill," Medb began, her voice honeyed, but with an edge of competitiveness. "I was thinking about how fortunate you are to have married me. Surely you came to our union with far less than I." Ailill, not one to back down from his wife's challenge, raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Perhaps we should compare our wealth and see who truly brought more to this marriage." And so began an exhaustive inventory of their possessions. Servants were roused from their sleep to fetch ledgers and count stores. The royal couple listed their lands, their jewels, their herds of horses and cattle. With each item they found themselves eerily equal, neither able to claim superiority over the other. As dawn broke, it seemed the contest would end in a draw. But then a steward mentioned Fin Venich, a magnificent white-horned bull in Alleel's herd. This bull, once part of Mave's stock, had deemed it beneath his dignity to be owned by a woman, and had transferred himself to Alleel's herd. Maeve's eyes narrowed at this revelation. The scales had tipped ever so slightly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it as she spoke. So, it seems you have one treasure that outshines mine. Alleel perhaps unwisely allowed himself a small smile of triumph. It appears I do, my queen. Queen Medb, her pride wounded by the discovery of Alleel's superior bull, spent days in quiet contemplation. Her advisors grew uneasy, recognizing the dangerous glint in her eye that often preceded bold and reckless actions. Finally, she summoned her court and announced her intention to acquire a bull of equal or greater value than Finvenach. It was then that tales of the Brown Bull of Cooley reached her ears. This magnificent creature, owned by Dara MacFiachna of Ulster, was said to be unparalleled in all of Ireland. Huge and fierce, with a coat the colour of rich earth and horns that gleamed like polished bronze, it was a bull worthy of legend. Maeve's eyes sparkled with determination as she declared, "This brown bull shall be mine, by fair means or foul. I shall send messengers to Dara MacFiachna and offer him riches beyond measure for a year's loan of the brown bull." Her courtiers shifted uneasily, knowing the pride of Ulster men and the likelihood of refusal. But Maeve was undeterred. She leaned forward on her throne, her voice low and intense. "And if he refuses, then we shall take what we want by force. I will not rest until the Brown Bull of Cooley stands in my pastures, and all of Ireland knows that Queen Medb of Connacht bows to no one in wealth or power." The die was cast. Maeve's quest for the Brown Bull would set in motion a chain of events that would echo through Irish legend for centuries to come. As Maeve's messengers rode out to Ulster, the Queen wasted no time in preparing for the possibility of conflict. She sent word to every corner of Connacht, calling for warriors to assemble at Cú Chulainn. Her summons reached beyond her borders, drawing allies and mercenaries from across Ireland with promises of glory and rich rewards. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, the fields around Cú Chulainn were filled with a sea of tents and banners. Warriors from every clan and province gathered, their weapons glinting in the sun. The air thrummed with anticipation as champions boasted of their deeds and young fighters dreamed of the fame they might win. Among the gathered host, several figures stood out. There was Fergus MacRoch, once King of Ulster, now exiled and allied with Connacht. His presence lent legitimacy to Maeve's cause, and his knowledge of Ulster's defences would prove invaluable. Tall and broad shoulders, with a voice that could command silence in the rowdiest feast hall, Fergus was a hero of old, respected by friend and foe alike. Allel's 7 sons, known as the Main, each led their own contingents. The warrior Queen Medb brought her famous herd of magical cattle, capable of providing milk for hundreds. From Munster came Ket MacMogach, a feared raider whose name was whispered with dread in Ulster. As Maeve surveyed her assembled forces, pride swelled in her chest. She turned to Allel, her eyes gleaming with confidence. "Behold, my husband, the might of Connacht and her allies. With this army, the Brown Bull of Cooley will soon be ours, whether Dara Macfiachna wills it or no." Allel nodded, but a shadow of concern crossed his face. He knew the men of Ulster were fierce fighters, and this raid, should it come to battle, would not be won easily. As Maeve's army prepared to march, a crucial piece of information reached her ears, one that would shape the entire campaign. The warriors of Ulster, known for their strength and ferocity, were currently laid low by an ancient curse, known as the Curse of Machna. The tale of this curse was whispered around campfires. Long ago, the goddess of Machna, disguised as a mortal woman, was forced by the King of Ulster to race against horses while heavily pregnant. Despite her pleas, she was made to run. As she crossed the finish line, she gave birth to twins, and with her dying breath cursed the men of Ulster. For 9 days and nights, at their hour of greatest need, they would be stricken with the pains of childbirth, rendering them as weak as a woman in labour. This curse had now taken effect, leaving the Ulster army incapacitated. King Concobar and his mighty warriors writhed in agony, unable to defend their lands. It seemed that fate had smiled upon Maeve's endeavour. However, one warrior remained unaffected. The young hero, Cú Chulainn. Whether due to his divine parentage or because he was not yet a man of Ulster when the curse was laid, Cú Chulainn stood alone against the impending invasion. Maeve's advisors cautioned her about this solitary defender, speaking of his superhuman prowess and cunning. But the Queen dismissed their concerns with a wave of her hand. "What can one man, no matter how skilled, do against our entire army?" she declared, legendary battles that lay ahead. As Maev's army crossed into Ulster territory, they encountered no resistance, save for a series of eerie warnings. At each border post, they found 3 forked branches planted in the ground, each bearing the severed heads of 3 Connacht warriors. These grisly markers were the work of Cú Chulainn, Ulster's young defender, serving as both a challenge and a warning to the invading force. Cú Chulainn, though barely more than a boy, was already a figure of legend. Known as the Hound of Ulster, he had earned his name by slaying the fierce guard dog of Cullen the Smith and vowing to take its place. Trained by the greatest warriors of Ireland, he possessed strength and skill far beyond his years. With his fearsome spear, the Gay Bulg, and his war chariot driven by his local charioteer Laig, Cú Chulainn was a terror on the battlefield. The young hero's first direct encounter with Maev's forces came as a shock to the invaders. A scout party led by the champion Freach ventured ahead of the main army. They found Cú Chulainn seemingly alone and unguarded at a fort. Freach, confident in his superior numbers, challenged the youth to combat. What followed was a display of martial prowess that would be recounted for generations. Cú Chulainn moved with supernatural speed and agility, his spear finding its mark with unerring accuracy. In moments, Freach and his men lay slain, their blood staining the waters of the ford. News of this defeat reached Maeve, who dismissed it as a fluke. She sent larger parties, each led by renowned warriors, to deal with this upstart defender. Yet time and again, Cú Chulainn emerged victorious. He employed not just strength, but cunning, using the terrain to his advantage and setting clever traps for his foes. In one particularly daring raid, Cú Chulainn infiltrated Maev's camp at night, moving silently through the sleeping army. He killed 9 men with each hand before vanishing into the darkness, leaving confusion and fear in his wake. As the bodies of Connacht warriors continued to mount, Maeve was forced to reassess her strategy. This solitary defender was proving to be far more than a mere nuisance. He was a significant obstacle to her plans. The Queen realized that if she was to succeed in her quest for the Brown Bull of Cooley, she would need to find a way to neutralize the formidable Cú Chulainn. Frustrated by Cú Chulainn's guerrilla tactics and the mounting losses among her forces, Queen Medb called a council of her top advisors and champions It was clear that a new strategy was needed if they were to make any progress into Ulster territory. After much debate, a plan was proposed that appealed to both Maev's sense of honour and her practical need to advance her army. She would offer Cú Chulainn a proposal: single combat against her chosen champions, one per day. This would slow the army's advance, giving the men of Ulster more time to recover from their curse. But it would also prevent further large-scale losses among Maev's forces. Fergus MacRoach, who had once fostered Cú Chulainn, was sent to deliver this offer to the young hero. He found Cú Chulainn resting by a ford, his spear at the ready. Fergus approached with caution, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Hound of Ulster," Fergus called out, "I bring a proposal from Queen Medb. She offers you the chance to face her champions in single combat, one each day. In return, her army will advance only as far as the day's battles take them." Cú Chulainn considered the offer, his young face serious beyond his years. He knew such an agreement would test his endurance to its limits, but it would also buy precious time for his fellow Ulstermen to recover. After a moment's reflection, he nodded. "I accept," he said, his voice firm. "Let Maeve send her champions. I will meet them here at this ford from dawn to dusk each day." With the agreement made, both sides prepared for the series of epic duels that would follow. Maeve began selecting her finest warriors, each eager for the glory of defeating the legendary Hound of Ulster. Cú Chulainn, for his part, steeled himself for the grueling challenges ahead, knowing that the fate of Ulster rested on his young shoulders. The series of duels that followed became the stuff of legend, with each day bringing a new champion to face Cú Chulainn at the ford. The young hero's prowess and ingenuity were put to the test time and again, but he remained undefeated. One of the first notable duels was against Nath Crantail, a warrior known for his massive size and brute strength. As Nath approached the ford, brandishing a tree trunk as a club, Cú Chulainn appeared almost childlike in comparison. The Connacht army cheered, certain of their champion's victory. However, Cú Chulainn's speed and agility proved superior. He dodged Nat's powerful but slow swings, darting in to deliver precision strikes with his spear. The duel ended with Cú Chulainn leaping onto Nath's shoulders and beheading him with a single, swift stroke. Another memorable battle was against Loch MacMophamus, a warrior nearly as young as Cú Chulainn himself. Loch initially refused to fight, claiming it was beneath him to face a beardless boy. In response, Cú Chulainn used mud and grass to fashion a false beard, showcasing both his quick thinking and his pride. The ensuing fight was fierce and evenly matched, with both young warriors displaying exceptional skill. But in the end, Cú Chulainn emerged victorious, using his famous spear that separated into multiple barbs upon entering the body. As the duels continued, Cú Chulainn's reputation grew, and so did the challenges he faced. Queen Medb, growing desperate, resorted to trickery. She sent the beautiful Fond to seduce Cú Chulainn, hoping to distract him from the upcoming battles. Though tempted, Cú Chulainn's loyalty to Ulster and his betrothed, Emer, kept him focused on his duty. One of the most poignant duels came when Cú Chulainn was forced to face his foster brother, Ferdiad. Both had trained under the warrior woman Scáthach and were evenly matched in skill. Their battle lasted 3 days, with neither able to gain a decisive advantage. They would fight ferociously during the day, then tend to each other's wounds at night, sharing stories of their youth. On the third day, with a heavy heart, Cú Chulainn finally defeated Ferdiad, using the spear, a weapon his foster brother had never learned to counter. As the days wore on, the toll of daily combat began to show on Cú Chulainn. His body was covered in wounds, some barely healed before he had time to fight again. Yet his spirit remained unbroken. Bards composed songs about Cú Chulainn's feats, and even among Medb's army there was a grudging respect for the young hero's skill and courage. The once beardless boy had become a man in the crucible of these battles, his name now spoken with awe throughout Ireland. However, with Cú Chulainn's strength waning after his grueling duels, Queen Medb's army finally reached the province of Cooley. Their objective, the famed Brown Bull of Cooley, was within sight. However, the bull's owner, Dara MacFiachna, refused to hand over the prized animal. Medb's attempts at negotiation and subterfuge failed, and she was forced to resort to outright invasion. The Connacht forces surrounded the lands of Cooley, laying siege to the fortress of Táin Bó Cúailnge, where the Brown Bull was kept. Cú Chulainn, though battered and weary, rallied to defend his homeland. He dispatched messengers to the other Ulstermen, urging them to rise and join the fight. And in a series of skirmishes, Cú Chulainn managed once again to hold back Medb's army, inflicting heavy casualties. But the sheer number of the invaders eventually overwhelmed him. Medb's champion, Brickrew, using deceit and trickery, finally succeeded in luring the Hound of Ulster away from the fortress gates. With Cú Chulainn absent, Maev's forces surged forward, battering down the walls of Dún Bolg. The defenders, led by the aged warrior Conal Cornoch, fought bravely, but were no match for the relentless onslaught. As the Connacht army flooded into the fortress, they encountered the mighty Brown Bull of Cooley. The beast, sensing the danger, charged into the fray, goring and trampling any who stood in its path. But even the bull's ferocity could not turn the tide of the battle. After a bitter struggle, the Connacht warriors managed to subdue the Brown Bull, binding it with ropes and chains. As the captive animal was led away, a great roar of triumph rose from Maev's army. Their long campaign had finally reached its goal. Cú Chulainn, returning too late to stop the capture, could only watch in anguish as the Brown Bull of Cooley, the pride of Ulster, was taken from his homeland. As Maev's army celebrated their hard-won victory, the men of Ulster finally emerged from their mysterious, debilitating curse. King Concobar, who had been incapacitated along with his warriors, now felt his strength returning. With a renewed sense of purpose, he gathered his able-bodied champions and set out in pursuit of the Connacht invaders. Messengers had already reached the king with news of Cú Chulainn's heroic stand against Maev's forces. Concobar knew that his young champion had bought them precious time, but now it was time for the full might of Ulster to be unleashed. Leading the charge, Concobar pursued Maev's army, intent on recovering the stolen Brown Bull and driving the invaders from their lands. The Connacht forces, weighed down by their captive prize, were forced to march with haste. Yet even as they fled, they knew that the reckoning was coming. The fearsome warriors of Ulster were on their trail, their battle cries echoing across the countryside. As the two armies clashed, the battle was fierce and bloody. Maev's champions fought with desperation, but they were no match for the fury of the Ulster men, newly recovered from their curse. One by one, the Connacht leaders fell, and slowly, Maev's army began to crumble under the relentless assault. The tide of war had turned, and Ulster's warriors, led by their king and the indomitable Cú Chulainn, were poised to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The final battle between the armies of Connacht and Ulster unfolded across the vast expanse of the Cooley Peninsula. Maev's forces, weighed down by the captured Brown Bull, struggled to maintain their ground against the relentless onslaught of Concobar's seasoned warriors. Cú Chulainn, having rejoined his kinsmen, fought with a renewed fervour that struck fear into the hearts of the Connacht champions. At the centre of the clash stood Maeve herself, directing her commanders and spurring her troops onward. She had come too far to be denied her prize, the mighty Brown Bull that would solidify Connacht's supremacy. But with each passing moment, her confidence began to waver as the Ulstermen pushed ever closer. Fergus MacRoach, once a loyal subject of Concobar, now found himself torn between his duty to his homeland and the oaths he had sworn to Maeve. He fought with skill and valour, but his heart was not truly in the battle. When Cú Chulainn confronted him, the former mentor hesitated, and in that moment the young hero gained the upper hand, driving Fergus back with a series of relentless attacks. As the sun began to set, the scales of the battle tipped ever further into Ulster's favour. Maeve's champions, one by one, fell before the onslaught of Concobar's warriors. Cú Chulainn, seemingly tireless, was a whirlwind of destruction, cutting a path through the Connacht ranks. Finally, Maeve's army broke, their lines collapsing as they fled in disarray. The Brown Bull of Cooley, sensing the shift in the battle, broke free of its bonds and charged back towards Cooley, trampling any who stood in its way. Cú Chulainn, seeing the opportunity, rallied the Ulstermen to pursue the retreating Connacht forces. He gave chase, his eyes fixed on the prize of the Brown Bull, determined to reclaim what was rightfully Ulster's. The battle raged on into the night, but as dawn broke, the field lay strewn with the bodies of Maeve's champions. The Brown Bull had been recovered, and Connacht's dreams of conquest had been shattered. With the armies of Connacht vanquished and the Brown Bull of Cooley reclaimed, the stage was set for a confrontation of mythic proportions. For the Brown Bull, the pride of Ulster, had been stolen and subjected to the indignity of captivity. Now it sought to reclaim its rightful place and settle the score with its rival, the Finnvenach, the white-horned Bull of Connacht. The two massive beasts, charged with the fury of their respective provinces, clashed in a titanic struggle that shook the very earth. They bellowed and charged, their horns locking in a violent dance of dominance. Clouds of dust obscured the combatants, but the thunderous din of their battle echoed across the land. In the end, neither bull emerged victorious. Exhausted and bloodied, the Brown Bull and the Finnvenach turned upon each other in a final desperate charge. Their horns met with a sickening crack, and both bulls collapsed, their lives spent in this faithful battle. As the last gasps of the mighty animals faded, a hush fell over the battlefield. The Ulster men mourned the loss of their beloved Brown Bull, while the Connacht survivors realised that their prize had been their undoing. The Táin had taken its toll on all who had dared to challenge its fury. This epic conflict had laid bare the futility of war, the tragedy that can arise from unbridled ambition. The scars it left upon the land and its people would linger long after the last trumpet had sounded. Yet in the midst of the desolation, a spark of resilience flickered, a testament to the spirit of those who had faced the Brown Bull's fury and emerged, however battered, still unbroken. Ihawa Nachara. Good night, my friend.